Hello guys and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to look at over 35 different balance changes that Bloons Card Storm definitely needs the most, starting from the buffs, nerfs and then finally the reworks. So let's commence this drama. So we are starting this off by looking at the buffs head first, that is the towers. A lot of these are in desperate of changes, as there's a lot of lackluster options in the game right now, especially the cheap and inexpensive towers such as the Boomerang Monkey. Speaking of the Boomerang Monkey, it needs 2 buffs. We'll increase the base damage from 25 to 30, and the secondary hit damage from 15 to 20, as it's just getting outclassed and power crept by other towers in the game such as the Dark Monkey Twins. And the meta around it kind of makes it unreliable and terrible with all of these HP buffing mechanics in the game such as CJ's passive awesomeness ability. Additionally, we can also make the Boomerang secondary hit attack accept any forms of damage buffs such as the Monkey Village or Gwendolyn's Heat It Up, so it feels more impactful. So counting that as 3 buffs, this should make the Boomerang more viable in ranked gameplay, because even the Triple Dart Monkey is just better than it right now. Triple Dart could also use a small buff as well. It's pretty good for what it serves, but just like the Boomerang's on attack effect, we can make the adjacent darts of the Triple Dart Monkey receive damage buffs as well, to make it somewhat excessive and match the total attack power of the tower, so it helps keep up with their HP buff meta. The next tower that desperately needs buffing is the Sniper Monkey, another 3-cost tower that's just getting ran all over in the current meta, as it doesn't feel efficient enough to get the full value out of. At least it's better than the Boomerang Monkey, but still, I would buff its damage a little bit to around 85. So it can hopefully feel more heavy hitting for a cheap attacker, and make it a lot stronger with parting gift decks, so there's more room to use as it does fulfill its own niche at least. Supply Drop Sniper could also use the same damage buff as the Sniper Monkey for the same reasons, as it doesn't have enough DPS to keep up against a ZJ meta. Next tower on our buff wishlist is the Banana Plantation. Banana Plantation is easily a borderline F tier tower in the game right now, mainly because of the fact you have to wait for your opponent to draw their cards out in their deck only to make 1 gold, and you don't get that right away during your turn, whereas the ordinary banana farm makes you 2 gold during your turn, despite costing 1 more gold to set down. This is a difficult card to balance, so I would just make it cost 2 gold instead of 3, as fundamentally it's kind of hot trash when your opponent already drew out 8 cards in their deck, giving you no value as the game goes by, so making it cheaper for now should make it a viable option. Another tower I do want buffing is the Druid Monkey. Druid is in around the D tier easily, mainly because of its low damage output as a defender, and it's one of the worst in terms of its defensive capabilities, making it only useful for its on-play healing effect. So I would just increase its base damage to around 60, so it feels more impactful as a defending tower, as even Tax Sprayer does far better than it. Next tower on the buff wishlist is the Bionic Boomerang. You see the common theme here. All the non-legendary Boomerang cards are pretty bad right now, as they don't do much outside of casual modes. This used to be an S tier tower back in the beta, but ever since the reload nerf, it has easily became one of the worst towers in the game, easily borderline D tier, and the extra ammo on play doesn't feel impactful anymore. So I would just increase its damage from 40 to 50 per Boomerang, to allow its on-play burst damage to become more noticeable against aggressive compositions. And when it reloads its 2 pieces of ammo in general, as it should be good with the on-play effect, but it's not even that great anymore. So some extra bit of damage should easily push it to the B tier in my opinion. Another buff that needs to happen is to do with the Thunder Druid. I get what your opinions are going to be, such as, well, it's basically a super monkey storm as a tower. In quotes. The recent nerf to its on-play effect was a step in the right direction, but I just feel like its main attack is completely dog litter, like 0 DPS. And even the jungle's bounty druid has slightly more than the thunder druid, which is crazy to me. So the best way to buff it without making its on-play effect too toxic is giving the druid an additional ammo slot. So you basically have 25 DPT instead of the usual 12.5. And it takes 2 turns to reload with 25 damage output, which is incredibly minuscule for a 7 cost tower. We could also reduce the reload time from 2 turns down to 1 turn. But giving it 2 pieces of ammo should make it more noticeable without having to be a sitting duck all day. Another tower that does require buffing is the bouncing bullet sniper. Just like his cheaper and non-legendary counterparts, he could use in a plus 10 base damage buff from 80 to 90 to allow certain interactions to be dealt with in one shot, and just like boomerang and triple dart, we'll just make the bouncing ability receive any form of damage buff such as Monkey Village, to make it more powerful during the later game. There's only 2 more towers left on the buff wish list. Dang, that's a lot to go through. Sharpshooter is next, and it's starting to get power crept as updates go by. Even Super Monkey has more attack power than a sharpshooter has, with certain power cards such as quick reload to boast even more DPT for 540 in one go. Just like the bionic boomerang, a nice plus 10 damage buff would be nice, as the first shot can deal 100 damage, which will feel much more noticeable. And of course, being an ultra rare / legendary monkey in the game, you can only have 1 sharpshooter in your deck, whereas other towers such as Super Monkey has up to 3 copies, and having the non-legendary status kind of limits the use of this tower in most aspects. And finally, we'll buff the Dark Champion. Another ultra rare / legendary monkey that's pretty darn underpowered currently, as it's even just outclassed by the basic counterpart, Super Monkey. A lot of the time it's too expensive, and it doesn't deal enough damage for the cost it provides. There's a couple of avenues we can take. Either add an extra ammo slot on the Dark Champion, or increase its base damage significantly from 90 to 110. To make it more noticeable on the field. The ability to make your defending towers stronger is pretty unique considering its legendary status. If one of the 2 buffs weren't enough, delve right and buff the increased defending power from plus 10 to plus 15 if needed. So that's all the towers we need to buff in the next update. Time for the bloons. What a mouthful. There is only up to a few bloons on our wish list we are going to buff for the next update, starting this off with the Signal Bloon. It's in around the C/D tier at best, mainly because it's super squishy as a bloon. 50 health and shield isn't really a lot going for it. It has potential to become good if you're using a bunch of Moab class bloons or similar large bloons in your deck, but the bloon isn't really aggressive, and whenever it's seen, it's only really used to call out the large bloons in your deck, and it's too easy to take down for a 3 cost bloon. So a good way to address this would be to increase the amount of shield it will have from 50 to 80, so the total HP is just as much as a yellow bloon, but only does 50 damage if it's broken down, so increasing the shield should allow it to survive for longer. Next bloon on our buff wish list is the Shield Gas Bloon. It ended up getting indirectly nerfed in update 2.0 ever since the bug fix they made where it can give shield doubling when it was popped, and it's the worst gas bloon in the game sadly, so I would just increase its HP a little bit to around 170 instead of 150, so it can tank more damage before getting destroyed, and utilize its effect much better. Another bloon on our buff wish list is the Discount Bloon. It recently got buffed not too long ago, which has helped it out a little bit, but it doesn't provide enough presence on the field, given it costs 5 gold to begin with, which ends up being a worse ceramic bloon in most instances, and it can be pretty good as it's the only bloon in the game to have 4 uses/charges per copy, even more than swarm bloons. Let's just buff its HP again from 120 to around 140, so it can feel more impactful as a swarm bloon. Another bloon that's getting buffed in my wish list is a healing bloon. It has similar problems to the discount bloon, as it's basically a squishier ceramic bloon for 6 cost a lot of the time, and its healing ability on play doesn't feel impactful enough going into the mid game. So buffing that healing effect on play to around 35 should be sufficient enough to make it viable in more mid-game control decks. The penultimate bloon that's getting buffed on my wish list is the Oh My God. Main reason as to why it's not good is because of its staggeringly long delay of 5, whereas Moabs and BFBs have 1 less delay than it. I would honestly give the Oh My God an extra use/charge, as Moabs and BFBs have 2 uses per copy, which gets you outstanding results as blimps, and Oh My Gods only have 1 use per copy in your deck, which makes it easy to counter a lot of the time. So an extra use per copy should suffice and make it a viable late game option. Now that we are done buffing some of the worst bloons in the game, let's look at the power cards next. The first power card we are buffing on our list is the Cash Drop. I never really seen any true value as it's pretty much a blunder for some of your important cards in your deck. It was actually nerfed in the pre-release version and now it's absolutely terrible, despite costing no gold to use. Let's revert that nerf to 2 gold gain as it felt really nice to have, and it might be a viable choice for some of those control decks. Next on the buff wish list we have Bedtime. Another standard power card that's dropping off as metas develop, and with all of the tower buffs inconsiderate, it may start to get indirectly nerfed, which will only limit its use against low DPS towers on attacking towers in general, so we can buff the maximum attack power threshold from 30 to 40, so it allows for more counterplay, especially if you're using it to exclusively counter the jungle's bounty druid or banana farms, and that usually ends up being a waste if you're not facing off against those towers, so this buff should allow it to even take off the mortar monkey off the board as long there's no damage buffers present. Next on our buff wish list is Ceasefire. Currently it's an F tier power card, objectively the worst inside of the game, and I think fundamentally it's flawed, mainly because it's a super rare/epic card that is designed to counter all of the opposing defenders, mainly to finish them off. But a lot of the strong defenders aren't the best in the current meta, so this card is just dog litter at the moment. So let's reduce the gold cost from 7 to 5. As it doesn't do much fundamentally, as even using it on one defending tower such as attack shooter gets you such a bad value for a 7 cost power, so once more defending towers gets added or tweaked, it should be a viable choice in the meta. And finally on our powers buff wish list we have Moab Strike. Another high rarity power card that's really struggling at the moment, mainly because of how expensive it is as a win condition, and the fact that jungle's bounty druid exists just kind of makes it useless if you can't combo correctly with your rushes, so we could easily make it cost 6 gold, but I would just increase the impact damage from 100 to 120 so it can't be left behind, so there's more of a winning opportunity when using a mid-game aggro deck. Let's look at hero balancing now, the last section of the buffs. First things off we are looking at Amelia the Amazing. She's probably the weakest hero in the game right now, mainly because of those aggro heavy decks at the top of the meta such as ZJ aggro, which holds the spotlight back for her. So so I would just boost her passive ability Bloon Shield from 30 to 40 in terms of shield values, as other hero passives are far better at the moment, that can make more plays and bring much of an impact. In terms of Amelia's hero exclusive power cards, I feel like the Prestige needs a boost for such a legendary card, as it's basically re-inflated but expensive, and as a one-time resort, so bumping that to 5 random bloons that was destroyed during a match should bring in the odds between overwhelming pressure or a game-changing trick. Lastly, for the hero booth wishlist we have Adora. This is mainly done for her power cards, as she hasn't got a lot of useful ones currently. The only useful power card she has is definitely Divination, as a pick 3 card is always good to have in your deck. Looking at her power cards, maximum heal should be buffed to heal for 150 HP instead of the usual 100, as you can only really use it on basic and advanced bloons such as ceramics for example. It limits the ability for the mid game as you typically see a lot of limp spam there. This bot should beef up heavily damaged ceramics and rainbows to a greater extent during the mid game portion. And lastly, her energy overload could use of a buff to have 2 charges instead of 1. Kind of like Gwendolyn's extreme heat, as most of her power cards are kind of meh at the moment. That's all the buffs highlighted. Time for the nerfs. Starting this off with the towers, and there's only really a few to nerf, as there isn't many OP towers currently. The first tower that definitely needs nerfing the most is the Dart Monkey Twins. I'd say it's one of the 2 only biggest outliers at the moment, and it's super consistent and versatile within any deck to fend off early aggression, which the twins are able to consistently handle in comparison to other early game towers such as the Boomerang. The best way to nerf it is to reduce the base attack power from 15 to 10, so you can't make the most benefit of its sheer efficiency of 50 DPT for the price of 2 gold, considering it's the only tower in the game to have 2 charges. Of course it's going to be so incredibly strong, especially with the Dora decks. And another change is more of a buff to make up for the base attack power nerf. When you link 2 Dart Twins right next to the one, the attack power bonus is double stacked onto that twin. Kind of like Village, where you can place a tower in the middle and double stack the damage both adjacently. So apparently this would be a great change when using multiple Dart Twins, right? Although these changes may fix the most overwhelming tower in the game, but there's another one that I find really annoying to face off against, Mine Supervisor. This tower is completely busted for a support oriented miner that generates so much plutonium, especially if you already got 3 of them on your field early on. You're able to cycle through hero abilities like no man's business, and it can even be used without needing to use Bonnie in your deck, which is crazy to me. I just think it does a little too much damage for a support tower, so let's reduce that to 40 damage, so it can't hit too hard early on, and make it easier to run down with some early aggression. Still better watch out for the triple mine supervisors on the opponent's field, as it can have the potential to be OP. Lastly, for the towers nerf wish list we have the Moab Dominator. Surprisingly, it's the only strongest ultra rare / legendary tower in the game that completely wipes the floor mid game, and even late game as well. Its on play effect has the potential to be really strong late game, as it makes a target blimp unable to really attack you. Alongside its better DPS output than a super monkey, we can reduce its damage slightly to around 70, so it can be a little bit easier to run down with a control deck if you're unable to counter this tower. Time for the nerfs for the Bloon cards. There's quite a lot of them that need some form of change to make them balanced somehow, while not making them too overwhelming at glance. And remember, the balances are ordered based on the gold cost for every card, so keep that in mind. First things first, we have the Nested Blue. They have nerfed regular reds and blues in terms of delay, but they forgot to change nested blues delay in update 3.2. So, let's give it the blue bloon treatment, and make it delay too, so it can't get pressure too easily. We also have the double counterparts. That hasn't been impacted by the balance changes as well, but I think they need a small stat rework, just because of how bad they can be without any form of HP buffs in your deck. So we'll delve into those later on. Next bloon on our nerf wish list is the booster bloon. I get what your thoughts are going to be. Well, they nerfed its base HP by 20, but I think it's not enough to render it balanced, as the on-play effect is just too strong and needs tweaking right away, making it the biggest outlier currently, as it even makes double reds and blues usable in aggro decks, just because of how wild the HP boost you can provide for the cost of one extra delay. And it has 2 charges as well, so it can be versatile in almost every aggro deck. So let's reduce the HP boost from plus 100 to plus 80, so it can nowhere get just as much presence on the field, and allow low DPS towers to thrive better, and make quick and lethal eliminations with double bloons and quick ready less effective. Next on our nerf wish list we have the Eternal Bloon. It's one of the 2 only ultra rare / legendary bloons in the game currently, and for what I've seen in game is extremely disgusting. It essentially becomes a clone farm if it's not dealt with properly, and it can even be used as a win condition for those Eternal decks, which is crazy strong, especially when paired with double trouble. You're gonna get unlimited Eternals on your side. The only true counter to it is Return to Sender, as it can reset the health scaling of the Eternal Bloon, but even then it's not enough to deal with the coexisting, or existing ones in general. So let's reduce the HP a little bit from 70 to 60, so it can be taken care of, and this is also in line with its HP scaling, so that's also getting reduced as well. Something like this can be really toxic to deal with, so I'm addressing it in my balance wish list at least. Another bloon on our nerf list we have the Steady Growth Bloon. Another bloon that's just thriving in aggro decks exceptionally well, mainly because it builds up HP every round, and that could turn for the worst if you're using a bunch of low DPS towers such as Boomerang or Triple Dart. I always find it annoying to face off against, just because of how toxic its HP scaling it can be, so there's a couple of avenues we can take. Either nerf the base HP from 100 to 80, so it can be dealt with much easier before it scales, or reduce its scaling from plus 50 to plus 40, so it's a bit less of a nuisance if left alone. Either one of these nerfs applied should make it much more balanced and less annoying to deal with. Next on our bloon nerf wish list we have the Yellow Bloon, and also its swarm counterpart. Yellows are still somewhat oppressive to deal with, as they still hit pretty hard and even towers that cost more than 4 gold ongoing to keep up early on against those things, so slightly lowering their HP a little should change sim interactions and make them less troublesome to deal with. Another bloon on our nerf wish list is the Speedy Pink Bloon. No wonder why it's so hated and blamed by the players who gone up against this bloon. And I agree how toxic it can be, so I would just nerf its health a little bit to around 95. So it gives more breathing space, and not allow your demise early on, as 100 damage could be the difference maker between survival or death. Lastly on our bloon nerf wish list we have the Double Yellow Bloon. Another bloon that has potential to become very strong, especially with quick ready in combination. So let's slightly reduce its HP to around 105, so it's on par with Swarm Yellows in terms of HP, and allow for sim interaction changes. That's all the nerfs that I really want for the bloons, as some of them are so incredibly strong at the moment. Stay tuned for the double red and blue bloon changes as we're delving into the power card nerfs. There's quite a bit of them that are so toxic that they desperately need nerfing the most, so let's go by the lowest gold cost, as I've explained this before. First things off, we have improved fortification, a currently strong win condition in tandem with double bloons, and we're giving it the booster bloon treatment, so it can't be as obnoxious in certain archetypes. Reducing its HP boost from plus 150 down to plus 130 should be reasonable. Nerfing that too much would probably make it unusable, so we'd like to keep things simple. Next on the power nerf list we have Try This. This is currently an S tier power card, as it can convert any low ammo tower into a damage machine. For 3 cost? Dang, that must be the reason as to why late game decks are even usable in the first place, and it can even force your opponent to use Shrink or Expert Negotiator on that tower with the extra ammo slot, and the fact that you can use it on a slow reloading tower such as Super Monkey, and it reloads after your turn for 4 ammo is insane to me, so mechanically speaking it's one of the best inside of the game. For now, increasing the cost to around 4 gold should be sufficient enough, and not allow easy defense against certain aggressive archetypes. Also, being a common rarity power card is kind of crazy considering how strong and easy it is to use, giving an upper edge for newer players, so a price nerf is justified for a strong power card. Next on the power nerf wish list we have Return to Sender, an insanely versatile power that can be used everywhere, whether it's on the defensive or the offensive side. You can use it to create a lot of game-changing plays, and it hard counters all of the scaling mechanics in the game such as the Eternal Bloon and Wizard Monkey, making this a must-have for your decks. Just like Try This, we'll nerf its gold cost to around 5, as it's so incredibly strong and versatile in around the S tier in my opinion, just because of the sheer versatility it offers, by creating more pressure on the opponent's field or just using it to cycle through your deck or use the tower's ammunition against such as a Super Monkey, if you can afford to play him down. Next on the power nerf wish list we have Shrink. No wonder why it's in there, mainly because for 5 cost, it can even turn a Sun Temple into a baby monkey. Holy Bloonaroni, that's insane value, and definitely needs tweaking. I would just add a new mechanic onto it. If the tower has over 100 attack power, it'll shrink its attack power by 100. So it can have minimum 0 damage or straight up turn the target tower into a baby monkey. If it hasn't a 100 attack power, it'll still be an effective tower control card for 5 cost, especially in Gwendolyn and Adora control archetypes, but nowhere near as obnoxious. Another power on the nerf wish list, you guessed it is Quick Ready. This is currently one of the most broken and toxic win conditions in the game right now, as you can have up to 3 copies of Quick Ready. You can stock them up in your hand, and once you have around 12 to 20 gold, you can spam at least 2 Quick Readies on the same bloon, especially when it's on a round 2 delay on the field such as a Moab that barely got damaged. You can just use it and just win blindfolded. It's just mechanically unfair and busted. Even though it can be used on the opposing bloons, it's mainly there to exclusively troll at the end of your games, but because of how strong this thing is, it needs to cost 7 gold, just because of how toxic it is, and it's the only polarizing card in the game considering you have to properly predict your attacks in order to not die to a quick ready rush. Hopefully with a cost increase, it should be somewhat balanced in a way. Lastly on the powers nerf list we have Expert Negotiator. Another tower control card that's just performing strongly, used to counter a lot of different late game archetypes, and the benefit of confiscating the opposing tower lets you even add an expensive tower to help you out, even if you don't include it in your decks. So just like the other power cards, it could use in a slight cost increase to around 9 gold. As for 8 cost currently, it's a little too strong in those control archetypes, and you'll now get more negative gold trades against cheap towers with the price hike, so hopefully it's a little bit more fair. time to look at hero balancing, specifically the nerfs. First things off, we have Adora again. We've looked at buffing some of her mediocre power cards, but I just feel like her late game potential is so incredibly strong. So I would just nerf her Orbs of Light ability to deal 25 damage instead of the usual 30 per orb, as she's pretty much unstoppable with 8 stacks late game. So this should make it easier to run down a control based Adora deck during the mid game portion. Lastly, for the hero nerfs, we have ZJ, one of the most meta defining heroes in the current ranked season. They recently nerfed his radical Bloons health a little bit to around 60 HP, but I don't think that's enough to drop him out of the meta, as the main problem stems from his passive awesomeness ability. Being able to HP buff the first bloon that you spawn is just insane, and it makes double Bloons so incredibly strong in tandem with his passive ability, and fundamentally it's going to be so broken anyways. So let's make it so he needs 2 Bloontonium to buff the first newly spawned Bloons health by 5 instead of needing 1 Bloontonium, as giving Bloons such as a double red or a pink Bloon plus 50 HP is absurd and needs to be tweaked at minimum. With this nerf, ZJ aggro becomes less prominent and broken. That's all the nerfs highlighted. Time for the reworks. There is only really a few of them to highlight, and of course there'll be no reworks to power cards and heroes as they're currently at a good state mechanically. Starting this off with the reworks to towers, and there is only one rework that I've suggested, mainly for the Sun Temple. Of course, being the most expensive tower to play, and its legendary status makes up for it. However, the main problem stems from its sacrificial ability, as it's too easy to counter with tower control cards such as Expert Negotiator, which makes you a sitting duck as it'll take a long time to recover all of your defenses. So I would like to change its sacrificial ability to only affect adjacent towers, kind of like how Village interacts, so you can't get punished too easily by tower control cards. And I would personally make it cost 16 gold and do slightly less damage, so it feels more reasonable in its current state, as Temple is just there to destroy all of your hard-earned defenses only to get shrunken or taken by Shrink or Expert Negotiator. Now it's time to rework the Bloons. There's only really a few to discuss about, and those are mainly stat shuffling, which commences with the double red Bloon. In order to make it less broken in conjunction with HP buffs, increasing the delay from 1 to 2 as it felt so weird to not be impacted by this simple nerf regular red Bloons have, and slightly bumping its HP to around 50 to compensate for the nerf should be nice, as it costs 2 gold, remember, and it can be a free kill, just because of how squishy it truly was without any HP buffs in consideration. Same goes with double blue Bloons, as depicted earlier. A bit of extra HP to compensate the delay nerf should be nice, as it has potential to easily be the worst Bloon in the game with just the delay nerfed. Next on the rework wish list, we have the Aura of Strength Bloon. It may sound good to buff a random Bloon by 50 HP, but it needs some sort of stat changes to remain consistent across the board, especially for aggro decks, as it wasn't really used that much in the current season. So increasing its base HP to around 120 should allow it to survive more often, and reducing its ability slightly from plus 50 HP to around plus 45 HP so it can have a healthier time developing. This is more of a rework buff, as it definitely needed it for a while. Another Bloon on our rework list is the damaged Moab. It's one of the weaker blimps in the game right now, mainly because you don't have 2 uses of it in comparison to ordinary Moabs, so let's make its on play effect damage it by 200 instead of the usual 150, and give it 2 uses / charges, so it's on par with ordinary Moabs. It can be seen as a nerf to its HP. but these stat changes means you can put more pressure onto your opponent if you can afford the second set. Lastly, on the Bloon rework wishlist we have the emboldened Bloon. Another blimp that's just never really seen in use, as it's basically just a worse rainbow Bloon at the moment. So, let's make it cost 9 gold, and give it a lot more needed HP as it doesn't provide enough presence, even if you manage to make it cost 1 gold, and only having 1 use/charge limits its cycling potential for the later game. So these changes should entice more usage. And guess what? We're finally done with all the balances we definitely want to see for Bloons Card Storm, so there we have it. A long explanation of what shall we balance the game to a greater degree, and these are mainly to shift up the meta without breaking the promise of a balanced meta. If you like this video, consider subscribing, liking and turn on notifications bell to support me, and there's never a dull moment to comment your thoughts down in our comments section. Thanks for watching. And before we end this off, make sure to put in my creator code RELOVE the user inside of the BTD6 Battles 2 or BCS shop to greatly appreciate for every in-game purchase you make. And I'll see you vivacious guys in the next video. Adios.